This is the Constructionist Podcast, where we take ancient stories, the person of Jesus, current events and topics, and help you construct a new Christian worldview that's relevant and loving to those around you. I'm your host, Kevin Bates. I'm a semiotician and community builder, looking at the signs of the times to build a better future together. We are the Constructionist Podcast, and today we are talking about mental health. It's Mental Health Month, and we're doing this live in front of a few people this morning. And so if you want to find out more about us, those online listeners, go to resonatechristian.church, and you can find out more about our archive and who we are and what we do. So, mental health, that's what we're talking about today.
Well, we also need to start with the Skillshare thing as well.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody else, because I know little less about it.
Sure,
go ahead.
Do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we've been talking a little bit over the last couple of weeks about building resilient communities and finding the skills that we have to offer our community as well as the things that we need. So this is just a way to try and match those needs together. So go ahead and follow the QR code. If you have something that you would like to offer the community, something that you can teach or a skill you can provide, put that in there. Or if you have a skill, a need, something that you need done, go ahead and fill that out too. And I will be checking it periodically and trying to matchmake, I guess.
Matchmaker.
Matchmake.
I thought so. Yeah, we have someone who's already filled it out who is great at helping people make friends. And I believe they also said they need help sharpening their mower blades. So if you've got skills there.
This is like Tinder for yard work. That's what it is. Tinder for yard work.
Tinder for yard work.
All right. Well, let's get back to mental health. Mental health is all month for the month of May. And as many of you know, that mental health is a serious topic. So we are going to be serious today when it comes to this subject matter. All month except Mother's Day. We have a Mother's Day brunch, which, you know, there'll be lots of people here and a good time and lots of good food next week. And then for the next 2 weeks at the end of the month, we'll have a Lumina Talk and also a Next Conversation where we'll be doing interviews, and Bethany Flug will be with us.
Almost
with her
8 years. That's
yeah,
okay.
I know. 8 years married, and she's still Bethany Flug Stoller. She will be here along with her colleague to do the second part of CRIM, which is the Community Resilience Model. So that will be part 2. So I'm going to do a review today of the Community Resilience Model Part 1, but make it more clinical in our understanding. So mental health, we're going to start with,
We also have a past episode, like back in October, I think, when they did their first workshop. So if you want to go back and check that out, you can do that too.
I believe that entire episode was just on trauma, big T and little t trauma. Correct?
Yeah.
They walked through a few of the skills.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think they did 2.
I mean, the whole month was focused on mental health, just
us.
like now. So
That was
there's
us.
so much
Okay.
you can listen to.
Hundreds.
Well, let's start with something important, an important statement to start out with mental health. Mental health is not a niche issue. It's not some special issue over here that only affects this small segment of population. It's actually a human reality. And every person in this room has a mental health. And for our online listeners, mental health is an everyone issue. It's not just something that we put over here in this room or this closet. So every person in this room has mental health. Not every person online or in this room has mental illness. And that's the important distinction. There's a mental illness classification that is a diagnosed issue, not necessarily just a mental health general issue. Mental illness is a diagnosed condition. And in many ways, you can recover from the illness. An illness is not necessarily a life sentence or a death sentence on your humanity. So mental illness you can recover, but then there's also chronic mental illness, which would be like a schizophrenia or a chronic depression or anxiety disorder that lasts a lifetime. That's a chronic mental illness condition. So I wish that the world would not have such a stigma and we would destigmatize mental illness, because then we could actually, maybe discover more about it and learn to live alongside of it instead of being afraid of it. Because here's the stats. Over 57 million Americans are living with mental illness. So you look at a population, how many people live in the United States? 330, something like that. So 330 million people, 57 million of those people are living with a diagnosed mental illness. 1 in 5 adults have a diagnosis of depression. 1 in 5. You look at an anxiety disorder, over 40 million adults have a clinically diagnosed anxiety disorder. So now you know why possibly the medical industry is exploding when it comes to SSRIs and things that are prescribed for mental illness. So globally, more than 1 billion people have a mental illness diagnosed condition. So those are big numbers, and it's not something that is out there anymore. It's something that is with us, and that's the anti-stigma that we need to start having the conversation about. Here's something interesting, that mental illnesses are, and the struggle is incredibly common, but most people, so 99% of humanity doesn't understand anything about mental illness. So it's common, and you have huge figures like that, but our understanding of it is very low. And even in the clinical realm, it's very low. And often we might feel it, or we might experience it ourselves, or someone in our family is feeling and experiencing it themselves, and then we judge it, and we actually classify it kind of in a unknown or weird or you have a problem type of category, and that's really sad. So today is about shifting that tone, and I really desire to shift the tone from confusion to clarity, that we would be more clear about what mental illness is and how to navigate it. I think that learning to navigate it in practical ways, and that's what Sharia and Jake are going to do. Our judgment would turn to understanding. I think that's important, that we would stop judging ourselves and judging others with mental illness and move to more of an understanding. And then reaction then turns to response. So I would say everyone in this room could claim their own mental illness, or someone in their family or a close person, at least in those realms, ourselves, a close person, or a family member that you have had to navigate through mental illness with. I don't know, can we all say that we have people in our lives that way? I mean, it's either ourselves or somebody close to us that we have to navigate. So
I would have questions if you don't.
Right. I would have questions if we don't. I mean, 1 in 5. So I know more than 5 people. So 1 in 5 are clinically diagnosed with depression.
But I forget what's the stats that everyone that experiences a mental episode as well.
Yeah, and I'm going to go over that.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, because mental episodes are different than mental illnesses. You can have a mental break, of course, usually revolves around the idea of stress. But mental health is not just emotion, and that's what we need to come to the realization, that it's an integration of our thoughts, our body, our minds, our nervous system, the relationships, the support system you have around you, your environment, if you're in a toxic relationship, those relationships. That integration of all of those things creates a environment of mental health or illness in our lives. And clinically, they call this biopsychosocial systems. So bio, life or biology, psychology, sociability. Our biopsychosocial system, biologically our brain, chemistry, and genetics, psychological thoughts, patterns, and beliefs, and then social relationships, environment, and those stressors along with it. That is what creates mental health or mental illness in our lives. So it's rarely just one thing. It's rarely just one like biological break, right? Where a lot of mental illness has to do, let's call it a software issue. Some of them is some of the classifications are a hardware issue where serotonin in our brain is low or high, and wires do, let's just call it wires get crossed, or our brain lobes talk at different rates to one another, which can create a hardware issue where through literal electrical probes being put in our brains, what they used to do with lobotomies, now it's much more advanced than that, that they can actually help people overcome addictive substances, alcoholism, drug addiction, by just putting a probe in their brain, in a certain part of their brain, because it's a hardware issue. A lot of times, though, it's a software, most of the time, it's a software issue. Our environments, the way we were raised, the big T traumas, changing neurological pathways in our brain creates a biological software problem. Then that turns into patterns, thought patterns, and then eventually environmental patterns with relationships and stressors in our life. So that system under pressure, right? That system under pressure creates mental health or mental illness. And in my lifetime, and your lifetime as well, push through it, ignore it, get some grit, get over it. You know, those are the things that we used to say to ourselves mostly. I can make it, you know, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you know, come on, buck up, you wussy type of attitude. But then the problem with the church is we then over spiritualize it, right? So a lot of mental illness, and this is a conversation that I've had very recently and got into an argument with somebody about spiritualizing mental illness into demon possession. That it's just demon oppression, demon possession, and that's, you just need to pray for release or redemption from the demon in your life. So unprocessed mental illness does not just disappear. You don't just pray it away. You can pray about it and you can pray through it, but you just don't pray it away. And it doesn't just disappear. So mental health or mental illness can show up in different manifestations. That can be outbursts, angers, emotional outbursts. That can turn into, like, let's say PTSD. That turns into an ongoing trauma response, however that is expressed in your life. But it shows up in our body when it comes to illnesses and chronic illnesses. Maybe I can't remember the name right now. They reclassified trauma and not bipolar. What's the precursor to bipolar? No, okay, it'll come to me.
Borderline.
Thank you, borderline. Borderline has a lot to do with relationships.
Bipolar was a predecessor of borderline.
Well, you can have a comorbidity to it.
Okay.
You can be bipolar and borderline at the same time, but they used to call everybody that was borderline, they used to say they were bipolar. Yeah. So relationships are affected greatly through borderline personality syndrome, which is a general classification that I think we need to be very careful. Just to say you're borderline, they're borderline. It is kind of a common thing now. It used to so you're neurotic. You're just being neurotic, right? You're just borderline.
A lot of that as well as insurance companies not classifying borderline as a disease, and so they have to be classified as manic or bipolar in order to get medication.
Right. Energy, decision-making processes, that mental illness can manifest itself in many different ways. So let's go to our slide 1. This is a regulation, deregulation slide. It's pretty detailed. If you look at that, those of you online can see that clearly. I hope we can see it clearly in the room. But you have a resilient zone. That's the zone between your highs and lows. I don't know if you know, in self-awareness, if you just think about yourself and your highs and lows, just think about when you're too high. You're just, screaming or upset or then too low, closed down or hiding, right? So highs and lows. That's subjective. You know, how you express that is how you express that. But it's when we are dysregulated. We can be dysregulated too high, dysregulated too low. Now, with the autism spectrum disorder or ADHD, it's very clear to see. You can see highs and lows very clearly, and when somebody's dysregulated or what is causing dysregulation, because it's so many times, not all the time, but many times it's very outwardly expressed when it comes to ADHD and with autism spectrum disorder, or just on the spectrum in any ways. You have level 1, 2, and 3 when it comes to autism spectrum disorder. We used to call level 1 Asperger's. They no longer call it Asperger's. It's just level 1 autism. So, but, and there's no but there, and, we can see in people who have spectrum disorders, oh, they're dysregulated, and this is what causes the dysregulation. When it comes to someone that's not on the spectrum, maybe that looks differently. What causes you to be dysregulated? Because everyone can get dysregulated. I mean, you know, I have a house full of, you know, 2 young girls, right? And they definitely, you know, let me have it sometimes in their dysregulation, right? So those of you who have households of young boys, I am sure that they let you have it, right? So we can get dysregulated. Everyone can get dysregulated. But our regulation, the green zone here in our chart, that regulation is, you can be stressed out, you can be upset, you can be mad, but you're not dysregulated, right? You have proper communication skills within that zone. You have proper ability to share what's going on inside of you. I feel upset, right? But when we're outside of that zone, communication or clear thinking reduces, emotional balance reduces, connection to others, you might go into hiding, right? You might get isolated. In our high state, that's the racing thoughts, the tension, the urgency, the panic. That's the panic zone, right? In our low state, that's the fatigue, the numbness, the disconnection. Everyone can experience this at any level in their life at any time. Everyone can experience this. It's not just for a certain group of people, right? It's not for the 57 million, right? Everyone can experience this at any time. You can be in your resilient zone. You can be under anxiety. You can be in depression. The question that I have for us in the room and online is, do we have the self-awareness to recognize it? And that's the importance of this conversation, because if we can recognize our highs and lows, we can better address and navigate those highs and lows. I'm talking about ourselves. It's easy to recognize that many times in other people. Oh, you're pretty dysregulated right now. Why? Because you're yelling at me, right? Or you're pretty dysregulated because you won't get out of bed. But do we recognize it in ourselves? 21 million adults experience major depressive episodes yearly. 21 million. That's not a part of the, well, that is a part of, but that's not necessarily the 57 million. That's clinically diagnosed depression. But 21 million adults experience major depressive episodes yearly. So is that what you were talking about with the mental break?
No, so you can classify mental episodes versus mental illness. That I think it's like 3 out of 5 people will experience some sort of mental episode in their life.
Right.
That would require intervention. Most don't get it, but then mental illness is more chronic, as you were saying.
Yes, and many of us probably should have had some intervention, but we didn't. We didn't, right? Possibly. Here's a daunting statistic. Over the last decade, it's nearly doubled. Depression has nearly doubled since last decade. So that's a challenge. That's a problem. Could that, I have my own opinions of that. Could that be the introduction or the ramping up of social media? Could that be the inclusion of just the smarter phone, making us more mentally unhealthy, right? If it's nearly doubled in a decade, so since 2016, could that be the political division that we, not necessarily the political division, but the witnessing of the political division because we have the smarter and smarter phone, right? Because we had a lot of political division in the 60s that we could see, but it wasn't a constant, like all night long, staring at a device all the way until you shut your eyes at night. So could we be honest, because I know some people don't want to be honest, like those who own those companies. Could we be honest and say, well, if it's nearly doubled over the last decade, and there's probably statistics since 2007, but nearly doubled. Think about suicide rates of young teens, young girls, when it comes to the visual, putting themselves out there visually, but also watching and comparing, the comparison factor when it comes to the anxious generation and those types of statistics that we've seen. So it's not, what I'm trying to say is not just personal, this is cultural, and it's a cultural problem. And it's a cultural problem in Western society more, and in wealthier societies more. So the question then is, can I be self-aware enough to start addressing this in my neighborhood, in my world, in my life, in my solo self? So your brain is constantly asking this question. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you talk about access at all?
Access to healthcare?
How, like, one reason that it's increasing is because we have better tools and access, especially in states that focus on mental health.
So the statistic then is, it comes up.
Correlational and causational, right?
Yeah.
So what's just correlational and what's making the cause?
Yeah, that's like the autism question. The autism spectrum is, why are we seeing so much autism now? It's because we're actually recognizing what it is.
Better
Is that what you're
tools,
saying?
more
Yeah.
professionals, more healthcare dedicated to it.
Yeah. Okay, so if you break it down and say it's raised 50% instead of doubled, it's raised 50%. That's still way too much.
It's staggering. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's 50% now more recognized and diagnosed and seen, but then another 50%, yeah, it's actually doubled. Let's go to slide number 2. So under stress, our brain is actually an integrated network of systems. And when you think about, if I just dig back into my dissecting brains, which I've done, if you dissect a brain is in different lobes and has different, it's not just a massive sugar. It is a massive sugar, but it is also formed in lobes and sections. So if you dissect a brain, you have the prefrontal cortex, which is that, that's what you think a brain looks like, right? It's just that squiggly lined prefrontal cortex. But if you start
the OMSI human exhibit coming back,
I don't know. It would be good.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, if you take that cross section, you begin to see different functions of the brain, and we have an integrated brain activity. So one part of the brain does not act independently from another part of the brain. So when we are under stress, a part of the brain alarms our cells. Our thinking brain gets quieter. Our emotional brain gets louder. Things begin to shut down in our brain as things get ramped up in our brain, all asking the question, am I safe? It's our fight, flight, freeze, fawn mentality. I know that you have not heard fawn enough, but that's when you're totally overwhelmed and you faint, right? That is now a new classification of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, right? So when we are overwhelmed, our brain is then beginning to say, I know I'm okay, or I don't know I'm okay. I'm not okay. I am okay. Why am I reacting like this? Trying to answer those questions. So one lobe, if you just think about dials, one lobe is turned way up and one lobe is turned way down. And our amygdala and our prefrontal cortex, our thinking, our emotion, our Ursula brain, all of that is working together. And I would say that it's not a weakness, it's just our neurobiology. I mean, our neurobiology speaks to us and functions for us. So the reason why I can do this is because of my neurobiology. The reason why I cry, the reason why I get like that heated upset, and I'm not saying thankful things and grateful things. I'm saying ungrateful things and negative things. That's my neurobiology, right? So that can be a condition, that can be an illness, that can be an environment. And when you say, wow, you're just a jerk, I mean, that's, if you say I'm just a jerk and that's just my neurobiology, okay, that's not fair, right? That's just my biology. It's just, you don't understand my biology. That's not a fair shake, because it could be an environmental condition. So 31 million Americans report daily depressive symptoms daily. 44 million report near daily anxiety. And then most people don't seek help for it. So in our neurobiology, daily, this is happening in our neurobiology. So a lot of people are carrying more than honestly we can see. So let's go to slide number 3. Most of the time we think, what's wrong with me? I shouldn't feel this way. I need to fix this. And when we not necessarily look at our life like just clinically or neurobiologically, we just look at our lives environmentally. Honestly, the things that we can fix are the inputs. So our inputs maybe our phones, maybe our lack of exercise, maybe our, and Jake's going to go into this when it comes to the resource body, maybe there's some things that we can fix in our lives to decrease stress, so neurobiological symptoms or structures or systems calm in our brain. And I think we need to think about it that way, that if we're constantly under threat, that it's just, we're not going to function, we're not going to thrive. So a little theological layer for those of us who are spiritual listening and in the room. A theological layer to this would be when Scripture tells us that you are fearfully and wonderfully made, that means your brain too. That means all the things, right? And fearfully and wonderfully made, I had to kind of look that up a little bit and find out, okay, what does that actually mean? And if you could retranslate that and say you were carefully and precisely made. Carefully and precisely made is fearfully and wonderfully, including your nervous system, including your brain, was carefully and precisely. So if you read ancient texts, you'll see people like David, Elijah, and Jesus. Those people experience a lot of stress. I mean, a lot of anxiety, a lot of expressed despair. David in the Psalms and such, just expressing despair, deep anguish of Jesus in the garden. And the response to that was never, well, you just need to fix this, right? That was never the response. It was always food, rest, and space. So in ancient literature, if you look in the Bible and you look at some other ancient texts, you'll see in the early church fathers and such of spiritual practice, right? And even in the Vedics and the monotheists in Judaism and Islam, you will see food, rest, and space. Food, rest, and space always is the antidote to the challenge that's being experienced. And so creating a sense of space or distance, creating rest, and making sure that you're not hangry. So let's go to slide number 4.
Can I talk to that for a second?
Yeah.
So you think of Maslow's hierarchy and
Maslow.
Maslow,
Okay.
Pavlov.
Oh, Pavlov, Maslow. Yeah, thank you.
And the base of that hierarchy is food, water, shelter.
Yeah.
And so if you can create security, then you can build off of those things in order to get re-regulated back to norm.
Yeah.
Pavlov, Maslow.
Pavlov, Maslow's.
Maslow. I like Maslow.
It's off the top of our head. Pronunciation takes a little research. Okay, slide number 4, levels of stress. So this is not an anti-stress talk. Okay, so there's such things as positive stress. You need cortisol in your body to function and live, right? So stress, there is such a thing as stress. When I go in and I lift weights and I'm sitting here doing bicep curls, right, which I need to do more of. But if I do bicep curls, that is a positive stress. I'm actually tearing muscle tissue in order to build muscle tissue, right? So there is a positive stress
Need stress to get out of bed in the morning.
in order to grow and increase. There's a tolerable amount of stress, but this is where it gets a little tricky, because tolerable stress, I can tolerate that. That could be an unhealthy response to life, right? And this is, a little Stockholm syndrome where I'm, just constantly going back to that which is very toxic to me. But I can handle that. I'm a tough cookie. I can put up with that. So what you put up with in your life is not necessarily tolerable. It should almost be intolerable. And you have to ask yourself the question, why am I tolerating this? So if you think about the tolerable stress is a time limited or short range type of stress. But then we have toxic stress, and this is what we're mostly talking about, is toxic stress. It's the stress that you can't live with. And we're not built to live with, right? We were not built to live with toxic stress. We can go under it for just a moment, but know that that's going to change your nervous system. We can go under it. We're resilient. Human beings can last through a lot of things, but you'll be maimed and injured in our brains and in our minds and in our bodies because of it. And so toxic stress is really what we need to manage, get rid of, and remove ourselves from in food, rest, and space. So I just have another minute before we go to our questions, but there is a method. I'm just going to quickly go slide 5, 6, and 7. Is noticing the toxic stress in your life is important, and this is called tracking. What am I feeling? Go to the next slide. What am I feeling? Am I feeling it? What am I experiencing? Tracking, actually putting your hand on your chest like this and feeling your hand is a grounding exercise, but also it's a tracking exercise. So am I breathing? A lot of times we hold our breath and we don't know it, and we hold our breath for a very long time. If you take your hands and do this and then you release them, you feel that tingle and that heat. That is a sensation from your sympathetic nervous system that you are feeling that stress. This is a stress, and now you feel that stress in your hands because the heat and the tingle. Maybe you slept on your arm and now you have neuropathy this morning where you can't feel your fingertips, right? So then connecting or resourcing is a method where we think. So we begin to build a belief thinking bank. And if you can think about a resource like that trip to Hawaii that I took with my daughter is a very special trip. That was a safe place. That was a magical place.
Is that a new slide, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's a new slide. That resourcing, now go to the next, I'm sorry. Go to the next slide now. There we go. Our resourcing is that place that it's the happy place. This is my happy place, right? This is the place that I can think about that I was in a good space. Everyone has that space, right? And when we begin to think about a safe place, our space within behind the eyes becomes a little safer. So a safe person, a safe, meaningful memory, a place of peace is a resource, right? But then you've seen the fidget spinner. Go to the next slide. You've seen the fidget spinner. Fidget spinners are grounding exercises. And so or the ball that you squeeze, a little spiky ball where you're just sitting there at your desk because, your boss is on your case and you can't handle life right now. You start squeezing the ball because you want to choke them or whatever. So we squeeze things, or we press down, or we go like that, and we pop our knuckles, and we pop our knuckles. Some people sit there and break their neck. I don't get it all, but those are all grounding techniques. We feel our feet. Our body is supported. My butt is in the chair. I can feel that. I'm pressing my feet against the little bar on the bottom of this chair. my breath, I'm feeling my breath, right? I go for a walk. I smell some flowers. I look at the lilacs and I actually take the lilacs and I smell them. This is why many counselors will look at somebody that's depressed and say, take a warm, hot shower in the morning every morning and go for a small 5-minute walk and smell the roses. Why? Because that's all grounding technique. And I know that that sounds a little goofy, but I can tell you that after you do things like this, your brain begins to rethink and follow different neural pathways. As simple as that is, it does bring our system back into the present. So those are some mental health techniques as we move out of, or try to move out of, toxic stress. So let's take about 5 minutes. We're going to put some questions up, and you can answer those questions at your table with each other, and then we'll go to our next section. That's the longest section that we have. So 5 minutes of questions. right, welcome back. We are continuing our discussion on mental health and mental wellness. We just finished a section on mental illness and the statistics of also the clinical and diagnostic ideas behind mental illness. Sheree is going to take us through attachment
Yeah, mental
theory
health,
and
attachment,
mental health theory.
co-regulation,
Yes, so go ahead and take it.
some resources. Okay, so I want to acknowledge that most of this comes from Carmen Spagnola, who is a trauma recovery practitioner and clinical hypnotherapist. So I just want to
Ooh,
note that
wow.
these are not just my thoughts and opinions, but the results of her work and synthesis. So to set the stage, we are all affected by white supremacy, patriarchy, capitalism, and these cause stress on our bodies, like having to work to make ends meet, or having to perform according to gender norms to feel safe, or experiencing microaggressions. All of these things cause stress, and it's the water that we swim in. We can't just escape it and not have that stress. So this is why it's important to learn to take care of the nervous system, learn regulation techniques, and practice them. Something we can practice right now is bringing our arms and our legs back online. So anxiety creates this tendency to kind of grip to the midline of your body.
Right.
So moving our limbs, stretching your arms and legs, maybe step or kick your feet, wiggle your fingers and toes. This sends a signal to the brain that we have a whole body to help us discharge stress. It reminds our brain that we have options. We can use our legs to get up and leave or move around if we need to. We can use our arms to push something away and say no, or to pull something towards us and say yes. Moving our limbs reminds the brain of its resources. So we're going to start with a review of polyvagal theory. So this has to do with the vagus nerve, which is a cranial nerve, a massive cranial nerve. It extends down through the face, down to the chest in front of the heart, but also back down through the shoulders. It then goes straight down through the diaphragm, spreads throughout the intestines, throughout the psoas muscles, and then splits to the tailbone and the top of the uterus if you have one. So that's a lot, like your whole body.
Yes, Robert.
Real.
Do we have a question
Real.
about uteruses?
I think it's uteri.
Yeah, into the void, I guess. It does still split, yeah.
Did you not want to say penis? Is that what happened? You're going to say uterus. But
No, I can
Okay,
say
you're good.
penis if you want me to.
No, it's
No, it's
The
just
va-
the
the-
vagus nerve is inside the body.
So if you take your ear and this part of the ear right here, this little section of the ear, if you take that and you pinch that, you want to pinch that, you are activating your vagus nerve. That is, so do you, yeah, down to your nuthers, you're activating. So if you feel that, you can actually like look at and
just don't
and
tell us
track,
where you feel it at.
yeah, sensations through your body. Go ahead, Shreya. Sorry for interrupting there.
All right, so polyvagal theory addresses top-down processing versus bottom-up processing. So for a long time, behavior change was believed to take place at the affirmation or intention level. Change your thoughts, change your life.
Bless you.
If you can believe it, you can do it. In 1994, Dr. Stephen Porges introduced polyvagal theory, and studying the vagus nerve, he determined that only about 20% of communication comes from the brain down to the body. The remaining 80% of communication is from the body up to the brain. So when it comes to nervous system regulation, we can't just tell ourselves that we're okay and have it work. We need to feel safe in our bodies in order to tell our brain that we're safe. So intentionally helping our body feel safe is regulation. Self-regulation is the ability to discharge roughly the same amount of stress that you're taking in without harming yourself or others. It doesn't mean being calm all the time, like we talked about with the window of tolerance. In fact, if we could put that image back up on...
It's image number 1 off of my.
Thank you. So you can feel anxious or sad or angry or even excited or happy and still be within your window of tolerance. Self-regulation is a really important skill, and as we grow in our ability to self-regulate, we also grow our window of tolerance so that we're able to tolerate more and not get bumped outside of that zone. When we get bumped outside of our window of tolerance, we become dysregulated and we're not able to discharge as much stress as we're taking in. So another word for you, regulatory flexibility, is the ability to get bumped out of your window of tolerance and still have the awareness and skills to get back in.
Touching the toes in your tolerance.
What?
Go ahead. Sorry.
He was talking
Okay.
about flexibility. It was a bit.
Okay. This acts like an
was
anchor
funny.
when we're feeling dysregulated because we know that we'll be able to come back to regulation. When we have regulatory flexibility, our experience of being dysregulated doesn't break us or our relationships.
Can you pause for a second?
Yeah.
So you're saying 80% of
Yeah.
of body to brain. So communication's happening from
Internal
body to
communication.
brain. 80% of the time, 20% from brain to body. So
Yeah.
we can't think ourselves out of
Yep.
it. So are you saying that grounding, mostly grounding, is going to help us be re-regulated?
I'd say I'd make it more general and say like somatics, like body work, working with the body to feel regulated.
Okay.
But grounding is absolutely a part of that.
Let's
Okay, got it.
define somatics. I think that
Soma is the Greek word for the body. So somatics just has to do with like body work, breath work, grounding, anything that is that bottom up processing, focusing on the body and how the body feels in order to communicate that safety and regulation to the brain. All right. So when we're feeling dysregulated, it is helpful to seek co-regulation. Co-regulation is the ability to help someone else discharge stress or to receive help managing your own stress in a way that isn't harmful to them or to you. Another word for the way we co-regulate is contact nutrition. Co-regulation is connected to attachment, and secure attachment is the ability to feel in ourself and engender in someone else feelings of being safe, seen, secure, and soothed. Attachment is a state, not a trait. It's dependent on what's happening in our environment, and it can change. So we often categorize attachment into 4 types. There's secure attachment, and then 3 insecure styles. Those are anxious, avoidant, and disorganized. And there's some really great and helpful work on this if that's something you want to learn about. 2 books that I'd recommend are Hold Me Tight by Dr. Sue Johnson and Secure Love by Dr. Julie Manano. Julie Manano also has a podcast called The Secure Relationship. Those are great resources to get more of an overview of attachment styles and seeing emotionally focused therapy in action.
So just to address that for a second, because I had to learn a lot about attachment styles and adoption.
Yeah, that
And-
makes sense.
Yeah, and in the longevity of like my kids, 15, 16 years in the home in a secure attachment. So we have a small amount of trauma, which could be a large amount of trauma, but a small time frame of trauma. And then we have then a secure attachment. So know this about attachment, and this is what I've learned, that just because we are having a, mental episode or we're struggling with our mental illness does not mean that we had a disorganized or detached attachment childhood.
Yeah, sometimes like the ability to act out or misbehave, quote unquote, is actually a sign of secure attachment because you're safe enough to act that way.
Right. So just because your child is acting out towards you actually shows that they trust you because they can actually act out towards you and still feel love. Mostly it would be in a disorganized attachment. It would be fear of doing that and being isolated and
bottling and depression.
Correct. That's something that I had to learn over a long period of time because I would say that like in my parents' divorce and some of the things, yeah, that was pretty traumatic, disorganized, right? But I was like my grandmother and my grandfather, that created a lot of security around my childhood too. So I
Yeah.
really have had to revisualize that from my life.
Reframe it.
Yeah, reframe.
Yeah. Um, in the attachment style conversation, we kind of treat it almost like a personality type. Like I'm an anxious attacher or I'm a secure attacher.
Right.
The reality is that we all have some percentage of each of these attachment styles.
Right.
We might be a larger percent of one, and that may be a general trend for us. But it's an expression of our nervous system and the patterns that we have built over a lifetime. So those patterns can be more and more ingrained over the course of our lives, and that's where we really start to see those trends. But our attachment styles and our behaviors will still shift within context. We might present more secure in certain relationships. We might be more avoidant in others, more anxious in others. So while it's helpful to understand the styles and our trends to better notice our tendencies and behaviors, growing our regulation tools is going to support us regardless of our attachment style.
Can I pop in there for a second?
Yeah.
Attachment style was big, probably 2 years ago?
Mhm.
Like there's this pop psychology
Yeah.
type algorithm out there.
Mhm.
And right now you see a lot of trauma-based algorithmic pop psychology happening up.
Right.
Before that, it was, I feel like Myers-Briggs had its heyday for
Oh,
a
yeah.
moment there, but like
Sure.
people were
And then the Enneagram after that.
Enneagram, but people were not like understanding what those things meant. It's like you can't be an I and an E at the same time. That's not Jungian psychology. If you know what those mean or don't mean, good for you. That's wonderful. But the going deeper with actual clinicians to understand psychology is the next step. And I encourage you not to get your psychology off of all social media.
TikTok
Yep.
psycho. Yeah.
And so right now, like attachment, but now we're into trauma, and like I'm wondering what the next thing is going to be.
Well, I had a clinical psychologist stop me in my tracks in a meeting because I kept using the word trauma. And she looked at me and said, "You are using the word trauma wrong, and I wish that you would change it." And I was like shocked because I was, embarrassed that I was stopped in my tracks. But then I had to rethink that because what she was saying is trauma is something that changes your nervous system. Just because you had a bad day doesn't mean that you had trauma.
The biological response.
Right. And so trauma is something that changes your nervous system. So our loose language from the internet, calling everything trauma. Yeah, I was traumatized. I know that's a pop language.
And you might have been.
And you might have been, yeah. But it actually changes your nervous system. And that's something that I've had to learn as well, is the language behind this is very important because we kind of just like water it all down and everyone's depressed and everyone's anxious and everyone has trauma. We all do, but did it change your nervous system?
Right. And that's part of why I want to be clear about where I'm getting my information
Right.
from. It
Yeah,
was not just social media.
It's TikTok. You just got it off your
Deborah.
TikTok, doctor.
Yeah. Question?
Right.
It can affect it, but it's not a long-term response to it.
It's not changing it. Right. It's not changing.
So there's little t. There's little t and big T trauma. Little t is temporal, where big T goes beyond this time period.
Tolerable stress is what I
Like-
called it. Yeah.
Yes.
Did you say trauma versus drama?
It could be. Yeah. It could be. Yeah.
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 I
There's actually no such thing as little t. It's only big T. Yeah. It's only big T. Trauma is an activity or an event or a series of events that change your nervous system.
I'd be okay with the word drama if it wasn't like
Yeah.
if it wasn't
Stigmatized,
also
yeah.
demonstrative. Like
Stop
well,
being dramatic.
Your issues aren't that bad. That's just dramatic.
Another question we had.
Is a person's style of attachment the same in every behavior, or can attachment be different according to what the relationship is?
Oh, like as relationships change over time, can your attachment change over time?
Yeah, or if you
Like versus your mother versus your father, or
with my mother versus
Mhm.
your dad, or, you know, is that,
Yeah, it can be different. It can depend on the relationship. You might be more secure with some people, more anxious with others. But also, as you change, as the relationship changes, your attachment with a specific person can also change over time.
But as I understand family systems theory and counseling, you have a base default attachment style that transcends relationships. It might manifest itself differently in different relationships, but you have a certain set that follows you into every relationship. That's your family system that you're kind of pulling behind you in a big wagon or trailer.
And you might have heard things like Freudian style of everything that you know are as a person was learned in the first 3 years of your existence, right? So the first 3 years are really important. That's been debunked, of course, but that's where that's coming from. Is your default attachment style is learned very early on, and can change. But your anxious attachment style can be expressed differently than my anxious attachment style. Very differently. Just depends on the context.
Yeah, and I think anxiety kind of underscores all of the insecure attachment styles.
Correct.
Like,
Yeah.
even if you are avoidant, like the feeling under that is still anxiety.
Yes.
So, in the same way that every body has its own unique food and nutritional needs that can change over time, each person has their own unique attachment style and need for contact nutrition, and that can also change over time. So, I'm going to highlight a couple forms of contact nutrition that you can practice and use in co regulation. And also know
Are
that,
you saying nutrition?
yes, contact nutrition.
Thank you.
Contact. Give me a hug.
Nutrition.
Contact nutrition.
Just know that depending on your experiences, it can be normal to experience activation during this conversation. Maybe it brings up difficult memories. So if you feel yourself getting activated, try getting up, walking around to the side of the room, getting a drink if you need to, take some deep breaths where your exhale is longer than your inhale. Do what you need to do to take care of your nervous system. You could also try scanning for safeness. So find something in your field of vision that is calming or stabilizing. I'd probably choose the flowers on the table. Then pay attention to your body for any signs that your nervous system is downshifting. Things like your shoulders relaxing, your breath deepening, or salivation coming online. Noticing those feelings of safety is something that we can practice to build those self-regulating skills. And that kind of goes back to the CRM skills that Kevin was talking about.
Community resilience model. Yeah.
So let's talk about mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are visual spatial neurons that give us vital information about connection with another person. They help us imitate social interaction and stimulate reactions in our own body based on what we observe. So we observe something and we can mimic it back to create social resonance and basically communicate, yeah, I feel you. Some neurodivergent folks, particularly those with autism, may not have their mirror neurons fire in the same way that they do for neurotypical folks. So just know that that's something to be aware of if you are or if you care about a neurodivergent person. In that case, it might take a little bit more work to get to that, yeah, I feel you connection. Some folks, by contrast, have very active mirror neurons. And for those folks, it's really easy to take on and feel another's emotions, even if it's just a character in a movie. So mirroring those emotions with our face, consciously or unconsciously, will help create safety and co-regulation in that relationship. I also want to note that patriarchy and gender norms place an expectation on women to be pleasant. And this can impact especially Black women who don't want to be perceived as angry, simply because they are not expressing joy in every moment. So as I'm saying that mirroring is an important tool for co-regulation, please don't think that I am asking you to perform pleasantness all the time. You have permission to express your authentic emotions, and you do not have to manage everyone else's emotions. Just know that in relationships that you want to nurture, mirroring goes a long way. By contrast, having a still face with little expression communicates guardedness, tension, or shutdown. And that can be very activating for the other person if they are trying to connect.
Is that a stereotype?
What, still face?
Yeah.
No, it comes from attachment experiments. So they would, this sounds unethical. So they would take a baby and a mom and have the mom look at the baby, but with what they called still face. So no emotion, no nothing, just blank face. And then watch how the baby responded to that. And it was usually very distressing for the baby.
Only or girls too?
No, I think both.
Okay.
There was a study on this with COVID and mask wearing in babies,
Right.
and how
Mm.
there was a lot of even speech issues because of mirroring the mouth in public
Mhm.
and emotions. And so mirroring is a learned skill as well. I think that's building rapport with people. Like you can put yourself in somebody's body language, and if you're conscious of it, you can physically move them around by making small movements with your body and emotions.
Are you giving rise to the anti-mask movement?
Yes. Maha all the way for me.
So to get a little bit more granular about what our face is communicating. So if we look from the brow to the upper cheekbones, that's basically what our eyes are communicating. So in a situation where we're feeling threatened, our eyes might be really wide for a moment as we notice something, and then we tense the inside of the eyelids as we focus and scan and try and figure out where the threat is. So this communicates, I'm looking for a threat. And if you're in a conversation with somebody and they're kind of doing that, you're now getting this message, oh no, am I the threat? What's going on here?
Or it could be the subject matter. You're just taking it as,
Right.
yeah.
By contrast, when we're using kind eyes, the inside of our eyelids relax and the outside tenses and lifts just a little bit. So try looking at someone as though you're trying to communicate that they are absolutely wonderful. Adorable.
Adorable.
So there
That's
was
kind eyes.
kind eyes, still face. There was a season, and I won't use the language that was used, but it's the resting angry face.
Mm-hmm.
So that resting angry face,
RB.
like,
What?
yeah.
RBF.
So what do we do with the RBF?
Soften.
I mean,
It has a place.
well, I mean, if somebody just is resting and that's the way, that's their.
Well,
That's just what their face does.
But
Yeah.
that's what she was saying about still face. That is
Mhm.
our RBF.
RBF
Talk about this. My
is
God.
still face.
RAF, resting angry face.
RAF. Okay.
RAF. I know.
We're changing it.
RAF.
The Royal
That
Air
is-
Force.
that is still face. So how do you? It's a understanding that your body is doing that.
Yeah, I'd
Okay.
say just be aware. You know, I quite honestly, there are relationships that I don't really want to nurture.
Yeah.
You know, but in the ones where I do,
Right.
that's something I need to be aware of.
Okay. Yes. Nonverbal communication.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just know what your body is doing. So those kind eyes help to evoke a sense of safety in the other person, and their mirror neurons will start to fire. So not only does this send signals of safety to the brain, but it creates this reinforcing loop between the two of you, promoting co-regulation. We've also got the middle third of the face, so from the bottom of the cheekbones to the bottom of the nose. Honestly, this is the hardest area of our face to mask what are feeling, and to show anything intentionally. That part of the face just does what it does. But the bottom third of our face, from the bottom of the nose to the chin. So a clinician, researcher, and teacher named Stan Tatkin, who developed the psychobiological approach to couples therapy, describes this area as the face as where we engage with the question, do I have a right to exist?
Mm.
So if we grew up in an
That's why
environment...
I have no control over it.
No, this is the other part where you do have some.
Okay.
If we grew up in an environment where it wasn't safe to be our whole selves, or if we're in a situation where we know we can't say what we really think, there will be a lot of contraction around the mouth, a lot of tension. Even when we're sort of smiling, there's still a lot of tension around the mouth. So mirroring back safety can look like softening around the mouth, even if you have to use your hands to help create some length and softness there. So remember what we learned about the vagus nerve. Relaxing the muscles around our mouth can also help signal to our own brain that it is safe for us to say that and to have that opinion. So practicing that relaxation around the mouth can be a tool to help create safety in our bodies and to show up as our full selves, even if the other person isn't going to mirror it back. And then one last thing we can do to help create some safety in our nervous system is to place our hands over our heart and our left lung. So there's ganglia of the vagus nerve through the left lung. And when we place our hands there and apply a pressure that feels good, this can communicate safety to the vagus nerve, which
Heart
then
and left
communicates that to the left. So
Your other
to play with it a little bit, try holding some tension in your jaw and then place some pressure over your left lung. And you'll probably find that that tension softens just a little bit.
It's hard to keep both.
Mm-hmm.
Tension, yeah.
There you go. The end.
So-
Some regulation tools.
So co-regulation, one of the things that over time I had to learn from a clinical psychologist is the breathing. You're never supposed to ask somebody to breathe. Take a deep breath. It's common, but that actually dysregulates somebody farther. So breathe through your nose, out through your mouth. That actually makes somebody panic. So it's scientifically proved that that activates dysregulation versus regulation. So to notice their breath, to do what Sheree was asking, to put your hand over your lung and notice your breath, that's different than breathe for me, in through your nose, out through your mouth, right? So to notice your breath. So in yoga, if you notice, the yogi in the front will always ask you to notice your breath.
It's an invitation.
It's an invitation to notice. That is to help somebody to start breathing, not to hold their breath. But if you force somebody to breathe out of themselves, I mean, I think box breathing is important and things like that.
Box breathing
Yeah.
is 4 seconds
Yeah.
in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out, 4 seconds hold. Back
But then
to
there's
4
another
seconds.
thing in mirroring is as I'm mirroring with you, there's something else. You have the mirroring path, the mirroring technique, but you also have a memory capsule. And so a memory capsule is when like the stamp, and you put it in the wax, and it's the seal that's left on the wax. It's not the stamp, it's the seal. And EEGs can now read memory capsules, which is wild. So they can see in an EEG your past and also your future of what's going to happen to your brain, which is crazy to think about. But in a memory capsule, when I'm mirroring with you, right, I can activate it in a memory capsule, either healthy or unhealthy. And we need to watch for that when we're like in this mirroring technique, because that can be a neural pathway to a memory capsule that, you know, if you smile and it reminds you of, you know, some daunting trauma in your life, you
Right.
know, about how I look, just how I look, my kind eyes, all of a sudden turns into some weird, you know, tragic event in my life. That's a memory capsule that's happening. This is why when somebody's crying and you're trying to look at them and you're trying to smile at them, they continue to cry because it's activating the memory capsule. So
Well, and I noticed even as we were talking just now, so you're talking about what EKGs can do, right? And I'm interested in trying to understand, and I felt my eyes start to tense up. Like I need to understand this, and then it was like, oh wait, let's come back.
yeah, kind of, sure. Yeah. But also I'm wondering what digital natives and this attachment style and mirroring and all that, what digital natives are experiencing with that. This is
As you're seeing all kinds of different faces on a screen, and
Right.
they're all communicating something.
You should
Right.
define digital native.
your son, somebody
Yes, I
that's
understand.
never grown up without a phone or a digital experience. I am not a digital native because I lived most of my childhood without these devices. So what?
Do you want me
Old
to say-
Bill.
Old. Okay. All right. And then I would say that I was listening to an interview this week, and they were talking about most of our challenges need to start being addressed in our neighborhood. And it needs to be addressed at the human to human level. where we need to have this human to human level of interaction. So coming off of these devices, out of the internet, off of AI, right? And getting into this contact nutrition is vital for our existence as human beings. Not just our existence as human beings physically, but mentally and spiritually and relationally. We are in a crisis when it comes to contact nutrition and the lack of contact malnutrition. Right.
And I mean, the more we're able to regulate our nervous system, the less likely we are to be manipulated or taken advantage of.
Sure. Right.
And that's also really important.
Right. Okay, let's go to our next set of questions. Let's take a few minutes to do that. All right, let's bring it back. We are continuing our discussion on mental health and mental health practices and discussing the clinical but also attachment styles, and now moving into what's called the resourced body. This is a new term for us because I had a doctor tell me not the other day, but a handful of weeks ago, that's great as long as you have a resourced body. And I thought, I don't know what that means. And so, of course, we had to all do a deep dive on resourced body. So that's what this is about, the resource.
And for the sake of kids, we've been going a while, so I'm going to just hit some big points, and then we can talk about it later if you would like. Everything that we've talked about this morning goes back into being a resourced body. So Kevin talked about trauma resiliency. Shreya talked about somatic methods to help yourself regulate. And so that is all part of being a resourced body. To have stress is to be alive. We all need cortisol. We all need stress to function. We've said it earlier today. You need stress to get out of bed in the morning. You need stress to start your day. You need stress to move. We are bodies of stress. We are essentially animals with systems that are out of our control. And so when you think about why am I doing this? Why am I having this reaction? It's because your ancestors a long time ago were fighting lions, and here we are in Sherwood. We are in a much... Yes, Rich. Yeah. Stress is like a violin, and how you tune it depends on how you deal with it. Nice, thank you. You can have toxic stress, and that's prolonged stress that goes beyond events that you carry with you, and that moves into the realm of anxiety. A book that just came out probably 6 months ago is Beyond Anxiety by Martha Beck. She's fantastic. She has a few different clinical psychologists. I believe she was at Harvard for a while. But she has her own podcast series and stuff like that. Please check that out. It's Beyond Anxiety. It just came out. And it talks about methods with creativity of how to move beyond your body's response to anxiety. And what she purports is that you can actually leave beyond anxiety or beyond that space. Anxiety will happen, but how you carry that with you is different. In The Body Keeps the Score is a very great book as well by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, a trauma psychologist that says your body is going to show you the results of your trauma. So chronic inflammation, weight gain, disease, illness. A lot of us were born with great bodies. A lot of us were born without great bodies. I'm sitting in a position of privilege where my body is great. I'm healthy at this moment, and I'm 37 years old. Yep. 37 years old right now, and I'm doing okay, but many in my place are not. And so it's about knowing how your body functions, not necessarily the aesthetic of it, but your trauma is perpetuated in your body, and you cannot think or talk your way out of it. You have to move your way out of it. We are animals, and we have to move. And so it talks about activating the limbic system. The limbic system is that, did we talk about limbic system yet?
Not yet.
No.
The limbic system is that part of your brain that helps you fight, flight, freeze, faint, or fawn.
I guess we did talk about it. The limbic system is the whole bigger picture.
And that's why you can be out in the dark and notice eyes on you, and you're looking for those things. Think about that. Some ways to...
Creepy.
It's creepy, but...
So let me interrupt for just a second, because I think that men are going to carry stress physically different than females. That's known, that if we are biologically female presenting, biologically male presenting, that stress is carried differently, has to do with hormonal levels as well. So
I think also we
scientifically,
need to take the word presenting out, because it would be biologically born. That's
XX and XY.
Yeah.
So if we look at XX and XY,
Chromosomal.
chromosomal biological sex, that, yeah, thank you, that we carry stress differently based on hormones. So our T levels, testosterone levels, will crash under stress, which then has a result to it. And you'll see it over time. A lot of older men have their T levels are down to 200, 300, and they're carrying weight around here.
the omentum.
The omentum, and they call that the omentum momentum, because your omentum fat, that's the fat underneath, that's the belly.
It's also called a beer belly.
Right.
And oftentimes people that don't,
Yeah,
Fear.
yeah. So
Which
we
causes
have
stress.
omentum fat, which creates its own hormonal, or its own hormones, which then tells your body, "I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry." Still, and so that's why they call it the omentum momentum. So that's a
Well,
little bit different from men.
here's an exercise. Everyone close your eyes for a moment. What we're going to do is breathe in twice through your nose at the same time. So, and a long exhale as long as you can. Now I want you to focus now on where in your body, what muscles do you carry your stress with? Okay, you can go back. Does any insights?
Yeah.
Shoulders,
Up here.
neck, your chest, neck. My head hurts. My head, yeah. So your body, you carry stress in a certain part of your body, and so when you're in stressful situations, if you focus on that part and move it, it will help you out. The extended exhale. We just did the extended exhale, and that's how to re-regulate your system. So
It's called the physiological sigh.
that was a physiological sigh, but if you, at the rate in which you breathe, if you intake air slower than you exhale, you will ramp up your anxiety system. Go ahead. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's all different.
Right. Right.
Rhythmic breathing relaxes you, and most rhythmic breathing is the adverse of what I just said. It's faster inhales and slower exhales. And so if we're pausing and really focusing on leaving our breath out and behind, and so when you do box breathing, you are in states of hold and empty for 12 seconds and inhale for 4, if you think about that. So focusing on your breath. Please, go ahead. Yeah, so physiological sigh is to move through panic attack. A really great method for, especially for the sigh, and 3 times to do it, yep, is to set a timer on your watch or phone or something so that every hour you're doing that. Did they say how often or just when it was happening? When it's happening. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the release. If you do that 3 times, your body changes instantly. Just the drop in cortisol you can feel because your adrenaline just dumps.
And that is a grounding technique.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is a physical grounding technique that could be used in anxious panic attacks, anxiety.
But if you're in a panic attack, like Kevin said earlier, and they say just breathe, not helpful.
Right.
But if you focus on your breath and invite it into that, it's different. The body scan, second part. Notice where you're holding tension. Notice where your stress is. Notice how your gut feels. Can I say this? The smell of your farts and defecate, it directly affects how your mental health is.
Can you explain?
Please expand on that for our, especially for the online audience.
I don't know if I want to expand
Because on the
Just
online
do-
audience,
just
that just
do
came
your-
across the
just do your own
internet
research on
just
that.
without
how
any
your
context
how your
or
gut
laughter.
biome is doing, how often you defecate, the consistency of it directly shows how well you're mentally doing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not doing mentally well when I'm constipated. That's for sure.
I was listening to this episode of Huberman this week, which I take with a big grain of salt, but it was talking about the yogic pauses. And so you try to catch the moment that you fall asleep, where nothing else matters and you're kind of in that state of kind of emptiness. The other state of emptiness that you can find is when you have to use the restroom really bad and all you can focus on is that. And then when you release, it's that state of emptiness.
Literally.
Literally. Practically.
Well, I mean, when I graduated with a biology degree, I came out of that program, and basically what they told us is we learned about pooping, sex, and eating, and that's all biology is.
That is to
Pooping,
be
sex,
that
and
is to
eating.
be human.
Yeah.
That is to be
So what you're saying is real. It's funny, but it's it's
It
because
is
we're
a
all
real thing.
junior high humor people.
but it's having an awareness of it.
Right.
So-
Yeah.
That's where we become human, is when we have the awareness of it and can change it pretty easily. Rhythmic moving, walking, swimming, running, where your body moves back and forth. Think about when you run, you're using one leg and the other leg. When you swim, you're extending one arm, hopefully for a long time, and floating up to the surface and then pulling through. You see this a lot with people on the spectrum of autism, where they'll rock. Rocking is a rhythmic movement.
Stimming. They now call that stimming.
Stimming.
Yeah. Everyone has a stim.
Everyone has a stim.
Your
Oh,
name.
that's why I was doing that. Yeah, so everyone has some sort of stim that they regulate with. You just might not know what it is.
Yeah.
Ask someone around you what it is sometime.
My family, we stim by moving our feet in and out like this.
Mhm.
Drives me crazy. Totally.
So everyone has a everyone has a stem. What is your stem? Is it biting your nails? Like kids, it's picking their nose, and adults sometimes as well.
Which now is related to Alzheimer's disease. By the
What
way.
was that statistic? Is
Uh,
it 40%?
Yeah, 40% of Alzheimer's can be, or excuse me, there's a scientific study out there that picking your nose
Increases-
introduces bacteria into the nasal passages. That bacteria could turn into a staph infection, which then that affects because it's right there at the brain.
Becky, sign me up. I'm coming in.
Yeah. So don't pick your nose.
Safe connection. So what we're talking about, the connection nutrition, what was it again?
Yeah,
Contact nutrition.
Thank you. So contact
Well, now.
nutrition or malnutrition, giving your child or a friend an 8-second hug. That is a big one. Sitting with people in most things. It doesn't need to be in crisis or in fear or in pain or anxiety, but just sitting with people and just listening. Co-regulating down. Helping people, inviting them to do cortisol shifts. Like, I can invite you to breathe, or can I go on a walk together? Or can we smell this flower, or whatever we're going to say, whatever your thing is. Taste this food, drink this coffee. Lots of different things that you can co-regulate with in safe connection. Social media is not safe connection. What's else not examples of safe connection?
I would say abusive relationships, and
Abusive
going back to
people,
the
and-
abusive relationship, and the cause of that would not be a safe situation.
I have a lot going on here. Sorry. Cold exposure and physical challenge. Exposing yourself to stress on the body. That could be heat. That could be cold. That could be exercise. That could be lots of things. Can help regulate your body out of trauma. And
What's
so
the Japanese event that they
Masogi.
Misogi. So the Japanese have a event that they usually will engage in, many times in their life. But let's say once a year, they'll do an event called a misogi, which takes them beyond their capability just 10%.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll do a walk, they'll walk for miles and miles and miles as a misogi, and that takes them beyond the 10%. So it takes them beyond the stress that they're used to into a tolerable zone, but it's like an event that they do every year, which creates a lot of mental health.
Yeah, it's doing an event that you don't think that you can succeed,
Right.
and then most of the time you surprise yourself. But cold exposure especially regulates your nervous system. It helps your emotions. What's it called? There's a word there, I forgot. But you don't need a fancy setup. You don't need a cold plunge. You can just take a cold shower for 30 seconds and try to increase from there so that your ability to handle things grows. And I know it's weird that cold showers can connect to emotional regulation and modification, but it is very true.
Well, there's an old adage: just go take a cold shower.
Yeah. The diet. What you eat, what you are, what you eat, but you are what your eats.
You are what your eats.
What
What
your
your food
what your food eats is important. Making sure that you get enough protein and enough fats to support your emotions and your brain. Knowing how diet works is a really big part. Taking in fatty acids, taking in supplements, it does help you, and it is very low hanging fruit.
Fiber.
Fiber. We talked
All
about
the
that.
things
We
that
talked
your
about
mother
that.
taught you.
Eating
Or your
kimchi
father
or
taught you.
sauerkraut
Mental
helps
food.
your emotions, helps your
Kombucha.
drinking
You're on
kombucha, drinking kefir, gross.
fermented foods
Fermented foods
is good for your brain.
is good for your emotions. It's good for your relationships. It's good for your mental health. And so all of those things packed together that we have talked about today is the resourced body. And as I went way over my time limit that I said I was going to go over,
Okay.
but as you go out from here today, just look it up and develop what your resourced body could be. But I'll stress that movement and diet are the foundations of that. If you can get those things down, then you can start to move. And it doesn't need to be big. It can just be getting out and taking a walk, trying to move. Then you can start to work on the hard stuff as well.
Well, a couple concluding thoughts. I think about co-regulation. Co-regulation, in my family, I have somebody that has non-epileptic seizures, and so when they have an event in their life, it's really important and is seen, like you can physically see it, right? Where you co-regulate with them and you can physically see the change. That's easy to see when somebody has an extreme expression of, physical challenges, right? It could be, like I said, autism or ADHD expressed. You can see it expressed very, it's very present. And then when you co-regulate with them, it's like the change is seen. But
Okay.
just know that happens at a smaller level too.
I was going to say this. Oftentimes we get the comment back, is ADHD or autism a mental illness? It is not. We need to address that as well, is that there are some things that people have deemed mental illness that are definitely not, and those two are the main.
Yes, and please do not believe that was caused by Tylenol in a pregnant woman. So, or a vaccine. Please do not buy into that.
What about Roundup?
Roundup, maybe. But also what you were saying in the resource body. So concluding thought there, but then what you were saying in a resource body is, so many of us have experienced this.
Hey, Adam, would you throw it up that slide for me? Thanks.
Many of you have experienced it. Is I can't lose the weight that I gained. Like I'm just staying the same, right? Or the older I get, the harder it is to lose weight, which is true. But many of us have said that or have experienced that. And the older we get, many times we embody the stress differently the older we get because we are under more stress, right? It could be a physical issue, but it also could be this, is we are not taking our body and putting it under a growth pattern. So a healthy stress pattern. So for example, you could, with the body and losing weight, you could lift weights for the last 25 years. You could run 5 miles a day and you could be carrying 20 extra pounds for absolutely no reason that you can put your finger on. And the moment you start walking at 3 miles an hour for a brisk walk once a day for an hour, all of a sudden you'll see a change. And it's because that was the key stress that you needed to put your body under in order to have the growth that you needed. So what Jake is saying is that there's a lot of things to resource our body with nutrition and with what we're putting in our body, but also our environment around us. But then the healthy positive stress that we can put in our body, we have to begin to figure that out as we become more digital, as we become more technological, and as we're not kneading bread anymore and we're not chopping wood anymore. So our sensory levels are decreasing to the point that our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems are no longer active. We're going from 72 degrees to 72 degrees, from our car air conditioner to our office air conditioner to our home air conditioner, and we're never extreme exposed to heat and to cold. Or we are eating the same thing every single day because we're just eating the same thing. We forget what we're supposed to be eating. So as you were talking, I was thinking about, well, as we are resourcing our body with health, we're also including different stressors that can change the dynamic of what's happening in our bodies. Do you have something to say about that one slide that was put up?
It's a overview of what I talked about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, you two. Really appreciate the time and the information. And I hope that you learned something in the room. And for our online listeners, thanks for joining us today and have a great afternoon.